Podcasting is more than just talking. It's listening. BSing with Bob Schmidt.
BS with Bob Schmidt, talking entrepreneurship, business, and marketing. My guest this week is Dr. Teruni Lamberg, a math educator and an author, and wrote a book that kind of caught my eye. It's dealing with meetings, and we've all, as business people, had meetings that suck. Let's just say it as it is. There's a lot of meetings out there that are just horrible. The book is called Conducting Productive Meetings, How to Generate and Communicate Ideas for Innovation. And let's just jump right into it, Teruni, just with the meeting part, because, like I said, we've all been to just horrible meetings. How is it possible to conduct a productive meeting, or is it even possible?
Yes, it is, and this is one of the things that I was really interested in, is learning how do you create meetings that actually go anywhere. As you can see, all of us have been in really bad meetings where nothing gets accomplished, where you just sit there. So how do you go about doing productive meetings is figuring out what your goal is as a team, so putting that team together, and then being able to move ideas forward so that it just doesn't remain in an idea stage, but it actually moves forward into products or new ideas or things that move the agenda around. So my when I started doing research and thinking about meetings, this came about. I ran a statewide project that involved every single school district and worked with 6 universities and lots of different people that were geographically spread across, that people didn't have time. So whenever we had a meeting, it's really important that we use that time productively. So a couple of things to run a productive meeting is to figure out what your purpose is and have people come into the meeting with ideas to share. So like giving people an agenda ahead of time and saying, think about this, so that when you come into the meeting, you have something to contribute. How do you structure the meeting time matters. So starting out a problem or a question, giving everybody an opportunity to share their ideas. It doesn't matter who you are. This is where hierarchical roles is where only the people with the titles talk is not productive. You just need to create a condition to give an opportunity for everybody around the table to contribute their ideas.
So the last company that I worked for, we used to do brainstorming meetings every week. And sometimes they seem to go with the flow. Sometimes they seem to work. We always had the agenda ahead of time. We knew that we're going to talk about this, that, and the other thing. How do you get somebody to start paying attention to what needs to be done and what needs to be said?
I think this really goes into, actually I wrote another book called Leaders Who Lead Successfully, is picking the correct team members that really help move that project idea forward. For example, if you have having buy-in to what you're trying to accomplish is really important. Building on team members' interests. So when people want to participate, it's because it's something that is personally motivating for them, or there's a benefit for them. So if people are sitting in the meetings where things are not meaningful to them, then they're not going to be as engaged. So picking the right team members for what you're trying to accomplish is important. The leader needs to make sure that everybody has buy-in and they're on the same page, even before you're conducting meetings to kind of solve problems. But once you got the team together and there's 3 levels within the 3 strategies to remember. First one is to get to throw out an idea there and say, here's what you're trying to figure out. But the first one is to get people to kind of brainstorm ideas, and if it stops there, then it goes nowhere because then nothing is resolved. So the second level is going to critiquing each other's ideas, so kind of creating conditions where people are going, this is not about egos or individual people's ideas positioning, going, right, here's the problem you're trying to solve, but let's think about, what are the pros and cons of what people are saying. Let's kind of hash it out. And sometimes writing down things on a chart paper or kind of creating some kind of visual is helpful so that people are on the same page and they can go, is this what you mean? Do I really understand what you're saying? How does that relate to the problem? And then the third level is to make sure that you record those ideas and go, are we on the same page? Are we on agreement? How does this solve the problem? And then what are our next action steps? What do we need to keep doing to move the ideas forward? So those are some really important things.
Now, with these, does it work with every type of business, or does it only work with academia or with leadership positions or, marketing? Does it work with everything?
This works with everything. I mean, if the idea is, this comes actually like research from creativity and things like that. So if anybody's trying to accomplish something, just kind of throwing an idea out there and then this is kind of a process for like taking all the ideas and then refining them and moving them. As you said, if all people did was share and then they're trying to position for power and I want my idea over your idea, or people are not just getting along because things, it's all about egos. It just doesn't go anywhere. This can be something from where you're a group of teachers trying to solve a problem. It can be in business. It doesn't matter what context. It's about how do you move ideas. So that going beyond just sharing ideas to figuring out what are we trying to solve? How does that address, and being able to critique it and then move it to like a shared idea of the group. Uh-huh. One of the things that I wrote about in the book is the relationships matter. People can't come to the table and share ideas if they're not comfortable with each other, if it's kind of a threatening environment, or if you say something you're afraid you might get fired, or you might look stupid, because one of the things is, say if you're in a room where you're kind of the bottom of the ladder, you're not going to be able to feel comfortable to critique somebody's, say, your boss's idea and think that was just, that was not a good idea. So you have to create conditions where everybody in the meeting feels valued. And so a lot of things that I wrote about is, how do you create that? What was really interesting is when I was writing the books, I interviewed really famous researchers who had developed a body of work that has literally changed the field. And when I was asking them, a couple of themes that came out, and one of them was that after a meeting or after you're doing some kind of project, going and having a cup of coffee or going for a walk, this informal interactions is equally important as what happens in the meeting. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you're sitting there, you have this brainstorming session, you go out for a cup of coffee or something, and in that moment, you're not having an agenda, you're just kind of unwinding, you're kind of relaxed, and a lot of times your brain's still on, whatever you were working on. And there are two things that happens. One is you're building relationships of trust and just like having fun together. And then the other part is that because you're free, you get a lot of creative ideas coming out that way.
Right.
It may not be the ultimate idea that you might end up going with, but a lot of people that I interviewed said, that conversations in the car was really powerful. So that informal relationships are really as important as the formal relationships to kind of move the ideas forward.
Right. Now, you mentioned earlier a couple of different times, you mentioned the word ego. How do you get the ego out of a meeting, especially if you've got, the boss that has that ego? Because we've all had bosses that were jerks. How do you get?
I understand.
How do you get past that?
One of the things is being mindful of that when you're running a meeting. I mean, when I was running this meeting, we had people who are just like very famous come in, and you had like graduate students who were just in the room. And so it's kind of like even just getting starstruck, we just removed titles. Like when when I made the agenda, I purposely did not put Ph.D. behind people's names. and also giving opportunities. We started with having people talk, like giving, say, somebody who's not the boss, giving the person who's the bottom of the ladder sit there and say, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Asking them specific questions so that creating and setting the tone for the meeting. This is about ideas that we're sharing and saying everybody's ideas are equal. Part of, I think that again, because this was a question that I was wondering about as I was reading through the business literature about how do you deal. That idea of ego came up in the research literature. It came up with people saying that if there are people who are just not going to be a fit, there would be, when I interviewed one person, he said they just eventually leave the team if they're kind of not functioning as a team player.
Right.
Or just like that naturally evolves. So selecting the right people on the team really matters.
Now, let me ask this, because you had mentioned engagement also, and
yes.
If you've got millennials in with the group, and you've got some baby boomers in the group, and you've got some Gen Xers in the group, I'm guessing that the different ways of engaging is probably different throughout the different age groups.
Absolutely. That's where, as a leader, as a project, whatever team you're leading, it doesn't matter what it is, it's really important that you get to know your team players. Kind of the more you can get to know them as a personal level, you kind of find out what interests them, why are they participating, what are they going to get out of it, really helps. It's about matching expertise and tasks. A lot of time you might have a team together, but the person leading the team has not matched expertise and task.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, in my project, in the Nevada Maths project, I had a graduate student who was just amazing with technology. So I made sure that he was in charge of all the equipment and videotaping and things like that. Another graduate student was just really great at her organization skills. She could just take everything and have everything organized. Matching that task, giving the right task to the right person motivates them. Another thing, when I interviewed some other scholars, they said, think about what they're going to get out of participating in your project and try to make sure that they can get that part. So it's not just only about the project, but you're also taking care of the people
right
in the team.
Oh, that makes sense.
That becomes a really valuable part of creating trust, as well as people wanting to be part of it.
So what about some businesses? All right, it's Monday, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, let's have a meeting. It's Tuesday at 1:35, let's have a meeting. It's Wednesday at when's the right time to have a meeting, and how long should that meeting go, and should there always be a purpose to the meeting?
Oh my gosh, I've been in so many of such meetings. And you're sitting there looking at the phone going, oh, people are secretly doing other stuff.
Oh, yeah. And
they're disengaged.
You're counting the tiles on the ceiling. You see how many speckles there are on the floor. There's a fly that kind of goes by, and you're kind of betting to yourself whose head that's going to land on. Your mind is going, and then they ask you a question, and you're like, damn it, I don't know. What was the question again? I was watching that fly.
One of the things is, if you don't start a project with, what are you trying to accomplish? What problem are you trying to solve? If you don't know that ahead of time, what are you trying to, at the end of the year or at the end of whatever, what are you trying to accomplish? If that is not clear, you can be having meetings that go nowhere. And there's something so exciting when people are getting together and they're energized because they can see results. They can see going somewhere. What is really, which I really feel good about in the Nevada Maths project is, even though we worked with over 140 teachers across the entire state of Nevada, and we had a team that were like scientists, mathematicians, we had cognitive scientists, we had district leaders. These are like busy people. And so trying to get people together in meetings is also a challenge because they're not all physically in the same location.
It's like herding cats, right?
It is like herding cats. So when you have a meeting, you need to value time. You need to have focus on what are you trying to accomplish, and then make sure you solve that problem, and then figure out what are you going to do next. What's your next action items? If it's just about getting together and just like going in circles, people are not going to, they're going to be resentful and not want to participate.
Right.
So the excitement of results, of seeing something being created, motivates people to stay engaged. So the idea is that you have goals, you refine people's ideas, you kind of co-create the goals, and then you kind of keep moving the ideas forward. And that you celebrate those successes as you are going through that.
Right. Now, does this work with meetings that are set up over the internet, or just telemeetings rather than face-to-face meetings as well?
Absolutely. I do a lot of that because especially when I'm collaborating with colleagues, like in Wisconsin and at Northwestern, a lot of times they're phone meetings, sometimes they're Skype meetings. Whenever we get together, it's about, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? What do we need to, at the end of this meeting, have that would move our ideas, our original goal forward? Do we need to redefine the problem? Are we solving the wrong problem? Mm-hmm. I wrote a whole chapter of how do you decide what is the right problem. Part of it is kind of looking at, okay, if you're trying to solve this problem, who are you solving it for? So looking at it from the perspective of the customer or the person you're serving, and kind of monitoring, are we on track? So I think that that's a really important part to think about.
So, Teruni, what was the worst meeting you ever been to that caused you to write this book?
The worst meetings I've been to are the ones you were talking about, where you're meeting once a week or once a month, and you're going nowhere just because you're checking a box.
Right.
You're supposed to have a meeting, so let's just gather up and then here's some handouts. And nobody shares ideas, nothing gets moved forward. It's just like a waste of time.
Is this what caused you to write the book?
Yes, I think that was one of the things. And also, because I was working with so many people that was spread across, and it was high stakes, that I couldn't afford to screw it up. Not like many of us come out of school, without even school, we find ourselves in positions where we have to lead others, and we're not trained on how to do that. And so to be able to not screw up this large project that I was working with, I just started studying stuff, actually in the last 15 years. If you really want to make a difference, you really need leadership skills. It doesn't matter how big organization you are, or you might be trying to accomplish something at a small scale.
What makes somebody a good leader?
What makes somebody, I think, is purpose and passion. If you don't have, think about it, would you want to go to a meeting where the leader cannot care less? When a leader is really passionate and wants to make a difference, it energizes the team. And I think a good leader is able to kind of recognize people's talents. They're able to motivate people to do things. It's more about a team effort. It's about valuing people's contributions, and then ultimately it's about making a difference.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that that meetings could all make a difference if we all followed the rules of your book?
Absolutely, because I think one of the things I was really interested in, my master's thesis actually was on creativity. I was really interested on where do creative ideas come from. So the biggest difference is leading for innovation and creativity is about shifting from how do we get the job done to how can we do it better. So if there's a chapter I wrote in that where it talks, if you're just like getting a job done, and I give the example of cleaning a house, if everybody does their part of cleaning a room or whatever, the house gets cleaned. But a creative leader is asking, how can we do this better? Is there a more efficient way to do it? Is there a faster way? Is there a better way? So those are some kind of shifts that he had to think about. So everybody using these ideas, no matter how complex or simple, will be able to do something better, faster, cheaper, which is more kind of putting that twist of innovation into it.
What would be the 3 takeaways from reading your book?
How to conduct productive meetings by finding your passion, your purpose. How to structure meetings so that you're not just spinning your wheels, that you produce, that you're productive with your time, that you kind of move your agenda forward. And the other piece is like communication, different ways to communicate and relationship building. That's really critical for conducting productive meetings, relationships of trust. And then how do you put that spark in your team so that people are just excited? When people are excited, they want to be part of your team, they would work day and night to get the job done. So how do you make it fun? I think that's actually a chapter on laughter.
Well, Christmas is coming up, and, if you're looking for that gift for your boss, conducting productive meetings, how to generate and communicate ideas for innovation, might be something good for a stocking stuffer, or at least maybe you and your staff could throw in some cash and buy it for your boss. How do we find your book?
You can get it on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble, so you can go to my website, optimizelearning.net. You don't even have to be a CEO to buy a book like this. People lead in all levels of whatever they're doing. And I think that everybody viewing themselves as a leader who's capable of making a difference.
The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast is brought to you by Orange Computer. Find them online at orangecomputerlax.com. And by Tri-State Sound and Light. Find them online at tristatesound.com. Tell your story with microcasts by podcastforhire.com. The BS with Bob Schmidt podcast is a Podcast for Hire production.